is your name?
My passenger,
Enjoying this game as much as you are.
she disappeared.
Harris is just a regular taxi driver working the night shift in a lonely city, picking up passengers and trying to make ends meet. But when he picks up a mysterious woman named Penny, everything changes. They get caught in some kind of supernatural time loop where the same journey keeps repeating over and over again. Every time lightning strikes in a dark zone, Penny vanishes and Harris finds himself back at the beginning. But why can only he remember what's happening? The story begins in an eerie, predominantly black and white world where Harris, a taxi driver, is working the night shift in a desolate, seemingly abandoned city. The atmosphere is unsettling and ominous as he drives through empty streets with only his radio for company. As he resets his taxi meter to begin a new fare, we catch a glimpse of something falling in the back seat, a detail that will become significant later. The radio crackles with strange discussions about aliens potentially altering humanity's time and reality without people's knowledge.
To our planet thousands of years ago. What people don't realize.
With debates about whether these aliens might actually be humans themselves. Harris, disturbed by this topic, changes the channel and hears Greek mythology being discussed on another station. His dispatcher's radio call interrupts, asking about his next pickup.
What's your ETA on that pickup?
His boss makes a casual joke, warning him to drive carefully or Hades will tear him to shreds, a comment that proves more prophetic than anyone realizes. Harris picks up his passenger, a young, beautiful, and remarkably humble woman who introduces herself as Penny. She needs to go to corner of Element River Drive.
So where are we headed?
Corner of Elmer River Drive.
There's something immediately captivating about her. She's gentle, attractive, and speaks with surprising familiarity despite this being their supposed first meeting. As they drive through the lonely streets, their conversation flows naturally, as if they've known each other for years rather than minutes. Their journey takes them into a particularly dark area marked as Zone 118, where suddenly, violent lightning strikes. The electrical surge causes the taxi to mysteriously shut down, and in that instant, Penny completely vanishes from the back seat without explanation. Harris is bewildered and frightened. He frantically calls his boss to report the bizarre incident.
My passenger,
Enjoying this game as much as you are.
she disappeared.
But his supervisor dismisses it as nonsense and tells him to reset his meter and get back to work.
Reset the meter, come back in. Go this one a wash.
Confused and shaken, Harris has no choice but to follow orders. As he resets the meter, we again see that mysterious object falling in the back seat. But here's where things get truly strange. Harris has no memory of what just happened. The exact same sequence of events repeats. The radio discussions about aliens and time manipulation, the dispatcher's call about his next pickup, his boss's ominous joke about Hades, and even his encounter with Penny. Everything happens identically, with Harris picking up the same passenger and having the same conversation. However, this time there are subtle differences. When they hit a bump in the road, Penny gets thrown against the partition and injures her head. In that moment, Harris instinctively reaches out, grabs her hand, and calls her by name, despite the fact that she hasn't told him her name yet. The moment their hands touch, something extraordinary happens. The entire scene transforms from black and white into vivid, full color. Penny is shocked, asking how he knows her name when she hasn't introduced herself yet.
I didn't tell you my name this time.
She mentions that this time, he remembered her. Harris is completely confused about what's happening, but when he releases her hand, the scene fades back to black and white. Penny quickly grabs his hand again, restoring the color, and tells him urgently that he needs to remember her this time. Before Harris can fully understand what's happening, lightning strikes again, Penny vanishes, and he finds himself back at the beginning of the loop. This cycle continues, but now Harris retains some memory of previous loops. He begins to understand that every time the lightning strikes in the dark zone, Penny disappears and the sequence resets. The key revelation comes when Harris realizes that his ability to remember is directly connected to physical contact with Penny. When he touches her, the world becomes colorful and his memories return. When they're separated, everything fades to black and white and his memories vanish. This discovery brings both relief and frustration. Relief that he's not going insane, but frustration at being trapped in this endless cycle. As the loops continue and Harris maintains his memories for longer periods, he and Penny develop a deeper relationship. They share intimate details about their lives during their repeated journeys. Penny reveals that she runs a plant nursery because she's a horticulturist by profession. Harris opens up about his own background, explaining that he never wanted to become a taxi driver but was forced into it by circumstances. His father had been a taxi driver before him, and Harris feels ashamed of the profession, believing it to be beneath him. During one of their conversations, Penny drops a bombshell. She's married in the real world, but her marriage is far from happy. She describes her husband as brilliant but cruel and ruthless. She explains that she can't divorce him because her family has influential connections, and their marriage was arranged for social and political reasons. This revelation explains why she feels trapped and alone in her real life, but paradoxically feels free and happy during these time loop encounters with Harris. Harris reciprocates by sharing his own tragic love story. He tells Penny about a beautiful woman he once met in his taxi, how they fell deeply in love, but then she suddenly disappeared from his life without explanation one day. He's always believed she left him because he was just an ordinary taxi driver, someone beneath her social status. Penny reassures him that this couldn't be true, explaining that his work is actually noble. He helps people reach their destinations, providing an essential service. Their conversations are repeatedly interrupted by the lightning strikes that reset the loop, with Penny vanishing each time.
No.
Harris grows increasingly frustrated with their situation, especially as his memories of previous loops become clearer while his recollections of life before the loops remain frustratingly vague. The situation reaches a crisis point when Harris decides he can't take the endless repetition anymore. Instead of resetting his meter and accepting another loop, he ventures into the dark zone to confront whatever supernatural force is controlling their situation. As he drives deeper into the darkness, the lightning becomes more intense and threatening, as if warning him to turn back. His taxi eventually breaks down in a particularly desolate area, and Harris hears the terrifying sound of an unknown woman crying in the distance. Suddenly, a blinding white light appears in front of his vehicle, and from within that light, a dark, menacing voice speaks in tones that seem otherworldly and ancient. The entity, speaking with authority that shakes Harris to his core, commands him to turn back immediately. The encounter is so terrifying that Harris immediately resets his meter and returns to the safety of his loop. When he reunites with Penny, he's overwhelmed with relief and joy at seeing her again. In his emotional state, he tries to unbuckle his seatbelt to get closer to her, but discovers it won't open. Strangely, Penny is able to release it effortlessly with just a simple touch. This incident leads to another crucial revelation. During one of their romantic moments together, Harris notices that the injury Penny sustained when she hit the partition is healing rather than resetting with each loop. This observation makes him realize that time isn't actually repeating, it's moving forward. If time were truly resetting, her wound wouldn't heal. Instead, they're caught in a repetitive task cycle, not a time loop. Harris demands that Penny tell him the complete truth about their situation. She begs him not to seek the truth, pleading with him to let things continue as they are. But before she can explain further, another violent lightning strike injures Penny more severely. As she begins to fade away, she manages to give him one crucial warning. No matter what happens, don't drink the water.
Harris, don't drink the water.
When Harris resets the meter this time, instead of Penny, an elderly passenger gets into his taxi, requesting to be taken to the same location.
Elman River.
Harris is completely confused by this change until, straining his memory, he finally begins to recall his real-world memories. This is when the story's most shocking revelation unfolds. The truth hits Harris like a thunderbolt. Penny is actually his lost love from the real world. She's the same woman who had gotten into his taxi years ago, the one he fell in love with, and the one who mysteriously disappeared from his life. Through flashbacks, we see their actual relationship, how they met, fell in love, and spent precious time together. During one of their real-world conversations, Penny had shared the Greek myth of the Weaver and the Vega stars.
The star Altair is a man, and the star Vega is a woman.
Two lovers who were separated by the gods and only allowed to meet once a year when magpies formed a bridge across the Milky Way, allowing them to spend a brief, precious time together. This story would prove to be more than just mythology in their case. The relationship ended tragically when Penny confessed that she was already married. Harris's heart was shattered by this revelation, and in his devastation, she left his life forever. Unable to cope with the loss, Harris died in a car accident shortly after, consumed by grief and despair. But if Harris died, what world is this? The answer comes when the elderly passenger pays him with a unique gold coin. Upon seeing it, Harris's understanding begins to crystallize. When he questions his boss about what he's really doing, the truth is finally revealed. Harris is a ferryman. In ancient mythology, ferrymen are the souls who transport the dead to the underworld.
Harris, you are the ferryman.
And they're paid for their services with gold coins left by the spirits they ferry. This explains the pile of gold coins that have been accumulating in his taxi, the same coins we glimpsed falling in the back seat during each meter reset. Penny had been leaving these coins as payment for her rides. The most devastating revelation comes when Harris learns the identity of his boss. The threatening voice in the white light, the entity who had commanded him to turn back, that was Hades himself, the god of the underworld.
I am the receiver of many.
Death.
And Penny? She's Persephone, Hades' wife. This revelation reframes everything Harris thought he knew. In the original Greek myth, Hades kidnapped Persephone and forced her to marry him, making her the reluctant queen of the underworld. This explains Penny's earlier comments about her husband being brilliant but cruel and ruthless. She was describing Hades. She genuinely doesn't love him and feels trapped in their marriage, but she cannot escape because of his immense power. The mythological connection runs even deeper. Just as in the ancient story, Persephone is allowed to visit the earthly realm once per year, bringing spring and renewal to the world. But the only way she can return to the underworld is through Hades' ferryman, which is now Harris. When Hades discovered his wife's annual visits to Earth and her romantic involvement with Harris, his rage was terrible to behold. However, instead of simply killing Harris outright, Hades devised a crueler punishment. He cursed Harris to serve as a ferryman for eternity, condemning him to ferry souls to the underworld while being tormented by endless repetition and the memory of his lost love. Penny, learning of Harris's cursed fate, took pity on him. To spare him the constant pain of remembering their tragic love story, she had been secretly leaving for getting water in his taxi, a supernatural substance that would erase his memories and allow him to exist without the torture of constant recollection. However, Harris's love for Penny proved stronger than the magic water. When he touched her, his love was so powerful that it overcame the spell, allowing his memories to return. This also explains several other mysteries. Why Harris couldn't unbuckle his own seatbelt. The curse prevented him from freeing himself from his duties, but Penny could release it easily. As the queen of the underworld, she had the power to temporarily free him. The seatbelt was both literal and metaphorical, representing his binding to this eternal service. Penny's reference to being like the separated stars makes perfect sense now. She is Vega and Harris is the Weaver star, separated by the Milky Way, representing Hades' domain, only able to meet briefly once per year during her earthly visits. Now that Harris fully understands his situation, Hades makes it clear that there's no escape from his responsibilities. Despite knowing the truth, Harris cannot abandon his duty to ferry souls to their final destination. He must continue his work as a guide for the dead, helping lost spirits find their way to the underworld. Initially devastated by the revelation of his cursed existence, Harris eventually comes to terms with his fate. When he returns to his duties, he begins ferrying various souls to their final destinations, each with their own story and journey to complete. During this period, he encounters many different types of spirits, gaining a deeper understanding of his role in the cosmic order. Eventually, Penny visits him again. She apologizes profusely for being the cause of his entrapment in this cursed existence, and she offers him a choice. He can drink the forgetting water and erase all memory of their love, living in blissful ignorance of his tragic fate. This would spare him the constant emotional pain of knowing what he's lost. However, Harris makes a surprising decision. He refuses the water and chooses to remember everything. He explains to Penny that through their relationship, he's come to understand the true nobility and importance of his work. He realizes that helping souls find their way to their final destination is actually a sacred calling, not something to be ashamed of. This revelation also helps him finally appreciate that his father's work as a taxi driver was equally noble and honorable. Most importantly, Harris tells Penny that accepting his role means he'll still get to spend time with her, even if it's only for 20 minutes once per year during her annual visits to Earth. For him, these brief but precious moments are worth an eternity of service. The movie concludes with a romantic scene between Harris and Penny, followed by a shooting star streaking across the sky, a beautiful metaphor for their brief but brilliant love that transcends the boundaries between life and death, Earth and underworld. The film's ending reveals that the entire story is deeply rooted in Greek mythology. Penny's character is based on Persephone, who in the original myths was kidnapped by Hades and forced to become queen of the underworld. The mythological Persephone was also associated with vegetation and the cycle of seasons, which explains why Penny works as a horticulturist in the story. Harris represents Charon, the ferryman of the underworld, whose job was to transport souls across the river Styx to the land of the dead in exchange for payment, traditionally a coin placed on the deceased's eyes or in their mouth. The film cleverly modernizes this ancient role by making Harris a taxi driver instead of a boat operator, but the essential function remains the same. The curse placed on Harris reflects the mythological theme of eternal punishment for those who defy the gods, similar to stories like Sisyphus or Prometheus. However, the film adds a romantic dimension by making his curse directly connected to his forbidden love for a goddess. The time loop element serves as a metaphor for the cyclical nature of myth and the eternal repetition of certain cosmic patterns. Harris's inability to escape the loop mirrors humanity's struggle against fate and the inescapable cycles of life, death, and rebirth that are central to Greek mythology. Ultimately, the fair transforms a simple taxi ride into an epic tale of love, loss, redemption, and acceptance. It explores themes of duty versus desire, the nature of sacrifice, and the idea that some loves are so powerful they transcend death itself. The film suggests that even in the face of eternal punishment, love can give meaning and purpose to existence, and that accepting one's fate with grace can transform a curse into a calling.